All right, here we are in Learning Plan 4A. We're going to be discussing ambivalence and evoking the person's own motivation, chapters 12, 13, and 14. So we're in a new process now, and that process is evoking. We started off with engaging, we just finished focusing, and now we're in the evoking process. And like I've mentioned many other times, this process is very fluid. So if you get to this place with your client and you start evoking information, that's great. You're making progress. So I want to spend a little bit time on ambivalence and the process of change, or how people change, why people change, um, and then we'll go into actually the evoking portion of this. So people change all the time. People change behaviors, people change habits, um, and it's just a way of life. Some people are okay with change, some people don't like change, and some people are kind of in between. It depends upon how serious the change is. And so, as a result of change, flux in a person's life, ambivalence often comes about as well, along with that, with the change. And ambivalence is completely normal, and what it is our comfort level is being kind of turned upside down, for lack of a better word. And so when that happens, we tend to have some fear or some reservations about what this new change could bring, possible good consequences and bad consequences of the change. And so those are some factors that most people take into effect before they make a final decision on change. And so motivational interviewing is geared towards helping people find that motivation and help them decide whether or not they're ready for change. As a side note, change often, at least in corrections, addiction, counseling, and other forms of counseling, uses what's called the trans-theoretical model. You can read a little bit about that in the text, and it's very helpful because it outlines different stages of change people often find themselves in. And most often, when people are ambivalent about making a change, they're usually in the pre-contemplative or contemplative stage of change of this model. And so, by knowing that as a helper, you can understand kind of where that person is and figure out how to maybe move them to the action stage, or if they're, then that's if they're ready to move to the action stage. And so, like I mentioned before, ambivalence is really caused by kind of that friction of leaving a comfort zone. And all of us have our own comfort zones, and it's normal, and ambivalence is normal. So it's not something that we need to discuss with the client in terms of that it's foreign to the change process. It's very normal. Okay, so as we move on here, you can look at box 12.1, the four flavors of ambivalence. It's kind of interesting how they break that down as to why some people get stuck in the behavior that they're in. And some people know that they need to change and they don't really know how. And so when we talk about change, why do people change? Well, people change for a lot of different reasons, and it could be out of inspiration, it could be out of desperation, it could just be because a person is bored and they want to try something new. And so, how people change is a little bit different. How people change um, depends upon the individual, and it depends upon the environment and a lot of different factors within that environment. And so it's important to explore all those areas. And so in this stage, the evoking stage, we're trying to evoke as much information as we possibly can about this ambivalence that the client is experiencing. We want to gain as much knowledge. We want to understand where the client's coming from. We focused on the top priority areas in the focusing stage. We explored their values and some goals that they want to set. And so now it's time to really explore the ambivalence to the change. And along with that comes exploring change talk. And so when we get into start discussing change talk, we have to discuss what that looks like, because there's a such thing as change talk and there's a such thing as sustain talk. And so people will give us statements of change talk and sustain talk when they're experiencing ambivalence about making a change. And so an example of change talk is if you have a client who has expressed a desire to quit smoking. Let's say Joe has come in and said, I need to quit smoking because, it's ruining my health. Well, there is a change talk statement right there. He's expressed a need to change. Now, a sustain talk statement would be something along the lines of, I know I need to quit smoking, but I I find comfort in smoking. It keeps me calm. So you have the change talk statement at the beginning. I know I need to change, but then the sustain talk piece is, well, I'm not ready to change because it's comforting to me. And so what we want to do is focus in on the change talk statement and then use that talk statement and throw that back at them in a way that gets them to continue down that path. If they're ready to do that, when you do that, you'll know right away if that client is ready or not. Excuse me. So, as we're discussing ambivalence and discussing the goals and values and the priority of items, we also have to be thinking in our heads, what is change talk and what is sustain talk, so that I can hone in on that and use that to see where the client's motivation is. And along with change talk comes an acronym called darn C, or actually in the text it's darn cat. And these are the reasons, actually not reasons, but these are what the client will express to you in terms of um, whether or not they're ready to change. And so the text uses this as think of it as a mountain peak. Going up the mountainside, you have um, the change talk piece, um, and it starts with D, which is desire, someone expressing a desire to change. And they were more in the pre-contemplative stage, and you can look at this in box 12.2 on page 164. And so traditionally, when someone expresses change talk, they have a desire, and you can read about what types of statements would be considered desire. They want to, they would like to, they wish to, they hope to change. And so this is considered under preparatory change talk. So we're kind of climbing up the hill with this preparatory change talk, and desire falls into that. You have ability. So ability would be a statement something along the lines of I can or I'm able to. You have reasons. So if a client gives you reasons, something along the lines of I would probably have more energy, I might sleep better at night, it would help me control my diabetes. Those are reasons, and those are considered, that's part of the preparatory change talk as we're going up the peak. And then need. I need to, I have to, I must, I've got to, when the client expresses a need. All right, so then as we're at the peak, and now we're going downhill, which is considered mobilizing change talk. And this is where we get into commitment. You have statements like I promise, I swear, I guarantee, and then you have activation. And activation is more or less you're willing to, you're ready, Um, you're prepared to take steps. And then finally going all the way downhill and mobilizing change talk is when you're actually taking steps and you're taking action. And so those are kind of the two sides of the hill as the text describes. You have the preparatory change talk which is darn, desire, ability, reasons, and need. And then you have mobilizing change talk going down, which is cat, commitment, ability, and taking steps. So these are important to understand as we discuss change talk and sustain talk, and your assignments in this learning plan will outline um, how to do that, and you'll get to practice that a little bit. So make sure you read the text on that because it can be a little confusing, but it's very important because change talk is what motivational interviewing is about, is finding the change talk pieces and giving that back to the client. All right, moving on to evoking motivation. When a client discusses change, they typically have a stronger commitment to change when they hear themselves talk about it. And so we want to focus on the change talk, but we also want to focus on sustain talk. When a client does bring out sustain talk statements, we don't want to ignore those statements. We want to bring those up to the client and ask the client, you're saying this over here, but you're also saying this. What's going on? Where are you at with this? And you can kind of gauge where they're at on the darn cat scale, so to speak, as well. You can also introduce rulers of importance, and you can read more about that in the text, but you can ask questions on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you see yourself making this change? And if someone says, oh, I think I'm a 5, well, instead of saying, well, you're a 5, how come you're not an 8 or a 9? You want to say something along the lines of, well, you're a 5, so how come you're not a 3 or a 4? It's a completely different mind frame it puts the client in so that they can focus on the positive and feeling confident about where they're at on that timeline versus, oh, gee, how come I'm not an 8 or 9? And they have to think about their deficiencies, and that's not what we want to do. All right, and then you can explore a Julia case study in here, which is it's brought up several times throughout the different chapters as we've moved along. All right, so I want to focus a few minutes on how to respond to change talk, and again, you're going to be using the core interviewing skills, ORS, open questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries to use that to do that. And so if you've got a client that is expressing a change talk statement to you, what you want to do is you can either ask a question about it, or I like to use reflections a lot because then you're basically restating what the client is already telling you, and that client is hopefully going to go a little bit deeper into that change talk piece. And then you can continue to reflect. And as they move into that, you can give affirmations, genuine affirmations about either their desire or their reasons or needs or etc. You want to give affirmations, especially when you're moving up up to the peak during the preparatory change talk. You want to really encourage the client to continue on that path. And you'll know right away if a client isn't ready to go down that path, and so then you need to back off and just kind of let them go in the direction they need to go in and explore what they need to explore. So again, this can be a very exciting time for new helpers, and it's important that we remain neutral and allow the client to be in the driver's seat because it's easy to take over this process. And so we need to understand that this is the client's time, and we need to respect that and try our best to be supportive no matter what direction they choose to move in. So this chapter is full of case studies. Please make sure that you read all of them. Responding to change talk can be difficult, so make sure that you understand that. Otherwise, reach out to me and I'll do everything I can to help you.